not being aware that my choices are informed by something that sits in me. That itself is a problem. Until you are aware and you accept that awareness, because being aware is one thing, acceptance means I am going to do things differently now that I know. So that one day you don't say, now that I am old.
Hi guys, and welcome back to today's episode, which will be an interesting one, which I look forward to listening and hearing from our guest today, because I met him way back when I was still in the youth bracket. But today he talks to us about finances and what we should know and do better at this point, especially in such, well, somewhat tough economic times. Karibu sana, please introduce yourself.
Thank you. My name is Patrick Wameyo, and I'm a financial literacy educator and consultant. Yes.
Now, the reason why I called you here, Patrick, in 2012, many years ago for some of us, somewhere where I was working, you came and gave us a talk on financial advice and what we should be doing about our finances. But at that time, I think I was very young and naive. And you told us one or two things. Well, I feel like this is a session of the chicken have come home to roost. Because one of the things you told us, and I jotted it down, was start saving early before the family starts. Mm-hmm. Then you mentioned looking back and regretting the block of 29 to 35 years. Yes. Not being able to fend for a family and children's education. But he also said financial behaviors are dependent on the person we are conditioned to be and the person we are meant to be. The drivers of your behavior have roots from an early age, 0 to 3 years. Let's pick that conversation from that point.
Let's start from the end, because you're seeing the evidence and perhaps we can bring it back to where it all started.
12 years later, here I am.
It is a fact that the youthful years, specifically 22, 29, or 28, then 29, 35, are the years perhaps you have the most powerful money. The salary may look small on the payslip, but the inflation is perhaps lowest on all the monies you'll earn. That is the money that has the lowest inflation, where all circumstances are held constant, so that you are not born in an abnormal year, or you didn't start working in an abnormal year. So that 100 bob that you had in your pocket 12 years ago when I met you, and the 100 bob you have in your pocket today, have got very different purchasing powers. If you bought a share then of, say, a company like Safaricom, you'd perhaps be spending 3 bob, 5 bob to buy a share. The same share today is 30 bob, 40 bob. So that purchasing power of 100 bob would have been 100 divided by 5. Today is the same 100 divided by 30. A loaf of bread was perhaps 16, or perhaps, let's say, 36 shillings. A loaf of bread today is always about 50.
60 something.
And that is because of what we call the inflation.
Yeah.
The purchasing power of money changes over time. And it doesn't reverse unless certain economic metrics come into play. And that does not happen in a third world country. It's got to be a first world country that has gotten some dynamics like the savings rate right, and it will not be experienced by most people. So during your youth, when you have this powerful money, incidentally, that is also the time when the mind and wisdom are not friends. because wisdom is acquired through experience. So naivety, which is the word you used, being naive, is not a thing of not being educated, it's a thing of age. So unless you are thrown into the pool of experience earlier in your age, you will grow like any other baby. You would be passing through the stages of life just like any other normal human being would. And I dare say that we are products of nature, and the kind of experience you get along the path of nature depends on the nurturer, what they were doing and how they were approaching life. And that's what sticks to you. So that when you start getting money early in your the early 20s, 24, 25, 26, Kenyan typical graduate, by the time you are getting that early money in your life, you also don't have a good understanding of how to use it for the betterment of the future. You'll notice in the boxes that I showed you earlier, there are those age brackets between 22 and 28, and then 29 and 35, and then 36 up to 42. And in each box, there are experiences you go through naturally in life. They have financial implications. You cannot see how the implications will look like when you have not had an experience. So what should happen to you now is that in the now moment, you need someone who has that experience to walk you through the small actions that you can take with your small money, but then you only experience the results when you're there. By the time you're there, you'll have wisdom. And when the moment, the opportunity and the problems of the moment arrive, you will be in a completely different position than you would have been if you didn't go through some investment experience earlier in the year. Unfortunately, investment is experiential rather. You don't learn investment in a class. Whatever you are taught in class, you have to go and actually go through it in the environment. The learning happens when you are seeing movements, not what you are taught, the graphs will move like this. Is when you actually work with the graph in your life on a daily basis, is when you realize this is what it means to buy a share low and sell high, or this is what it means to buy a share that has a growth potential. It can grow from 5 to 30 in these short 10 years. Yes.
Now you've talked about the age brackets of what you're supposed to be knowing at, or rather the experience you're supposed to be having at whatever age, because I had noted 29 to 35. Could you take us through the different age brackets?
First of all, I said we are children of nature, because children of nature means that you learn from someone else, the important person in your life. Could be your mother and father, could be your grandfather and grandmother, depending on who raised you. You learn from them. Now remember, what I learned from my parents, who are younger, when I'm 10 years, is different from what I learned from my grandparents, who are older when I'm 10. That is an important fact. What you are doing, what your grandfather is doing is different from what your mother would be doing on a daily basis. So although you are a 10-year-old kid, one raised by 35-year-old parents and one raised by 55-year-old parents, different environments. So that one may be staying with parents who are actually very actively investing, and they'll be exposed to investing when they are very young. One may be staying with that 5-year-old parent who is also an investor, and they may be exposed to investing early if the father was exposed to investing in a way earlier. So there's a way that nurturing moment has an impact on who eventually become. Let's take that in first, so that these two 10-year-olds will not end up with the same mindsets at the next stop, say when they are now 20 years old. They'll be completely two different people. I'll give you an example. Think of the Indian community where children walked through the life of saving in the way they spend money. So part of their life is when you receive money, use it this and keep this, and this bit which you keep, you do this thing with it. In the other context of Kenya, let me call it the wider Kenya, you give a kid 1,000 bob, spend the way you want. Next week, you're given 1 more 1,000 bob. these two kids are learning different things. One has been taught that on a Friday or at the end of the month, you need to show what you kept and we take it to the bank. This other one, whether you show or don't show, you live well. So this one is picking up an approach in life. Same age mate is picking up a completely different approach in life. One will learn to be setting aside. In the mind, it becomes imprinted that when I earn, when I pick any money, when I receive any money, I don't eat all of it. So that behavior becomes a pattern. In the other's mind, when I receive any money, I spend all of it. So this guy, when you now begin to expose him to the need to save at the same age as 25 years, he'll be struggling to start adjusting mentally. Not that the money is not adequate. These people may be working for the same employer and earning the same amount of money, but one will have difficulty, mental difficulty, in setting aside, because it's not been built in you as a value system. We are 25-year-old, same value systems. One person, the value for accumulation is very low in the hierarchy. The other one is very high in the hierarchy. They will not approach money the same way. That's the first fundamental thing. Then two, there are things which you can only learn through experience. So this experiential learning of how to set aside 10 bob, 20 bob, 30 bob out of 100, and this one spend the entire 100, it may look like 100. The value is not 100. The value is moneyless. So it's value systems that drive choices. Money comes down to choices. A choice to save, a choice to spend wisely, a choice to invest. The same amount of money is a choice. How you set up your mind? Basics. So when I talk about ages, age 0 to age 7.
Sorry, come again?
When I talk about ages, the things you go through in the age blocks, age 0 to age 7, the kid is learning to be a kid, nothing else. But they are picking their values from this environment. That is the only financial thing you pick. Because in this environment in which you are, do your parents value accumulation? Do their lives demonstrate accumulation? Because it's not what they say, but what they do that you pick. So if their lives demonstrate accumulation, you begin to value accumulation.
That's what you're watching.
That's what you're watching. That's what you're becoming. If another kid is being raised in the same environment between age 0 and 7 by parents who don't value accumulation, instead they tend to spend their life, that's what that kid is getting exposed to.
Yeah.
And that's who he is becoming. So between age 8 and age 15, these are the ages when the kid is now up to age 12. You've acquired value systems for your from the people that you call nice around you. Because if you are an Omondi like me and you are raised by a Muzungu from England, the Omondi is just a name. You will learn the values of this Muzungu. You don't learn the names of the Omondis. It's not the genetical, it is socialization. At this point, the kid is still the load to the parents. They're not earning, they're not making any money. Everything they do is an extension of what you do, but they have begun to look outwards. So the challenge for parents is providing for them. They are not necessarily in any way learning to do anything unless you expose them to it. And there's very fast learning, but they are beginning to look outwards. So from age 9, they are looking more outwards. They are using external references. Now, you've given me 0 value for accumulation, and my external references are not necessarily people who are also promoting accumulation. I've learned how to spend, and this guy is spending big.
So you're picking
that combination
spending.
is dangerous. I have learned how to be a bit careful with the money. Even if you expose me to an environment of a lot of spending, I may not necessarily move to 100% spending. I will still spend the 70% maybe faster, but my 30% will still tend to go where it used to go because I'm adjusted. My mental frame is adjusted. It's a value system now. It's now in my value system.
So what are you saying? You have till 15 to get it right?
Actually, up to 12. That's the ideal age that it is easy to teach a child. Beyond that, they begin to question things. When your kids begin to question, Mom, you said this. Why are you doing this? When the mind is in that frame, it's quite different. They don't absorb like a sponge. But you see, in the earlier ages, it's like a sponge. So what you showed them by your way of life earlier is absorbed, a lot of it. At these ages now, they are in those frictional space where they are accepting some values because you told them they were bought in a supermarket, but then they realized they were not bought, they were born. So they are coming to a place where they are questioning so many things. So whatever you say is actually not taken. Whatever you do is taken more. But now they are taking less of what you are telling them, and they are taking more of what the environment is giving. So this guy you're really losing him. So that after school, if your kid has not had an experience with making money, for example, it will be very difficult to start teaching them how to make money, except by forcing them into, say, a family business. Again, you see where parents take kids up to university, they graduate, then they want to hand them over the family business, in which they never participated. They reject the whole thing because by that time they have formed their opinion of who they want to be and what they want to do, and not this nice business to you that actually gave them the food. That business is not valued in the same way by the young boy as the parent. And I've met parents who have brought me children, postgraduate, show my son how to manage this real estate. You are building 10 flats, the boy was there. He never even went near the gate of any of them. And you want him to fall in love with flats just because you have flats to hand over to him. He'll fall in love with the money from the flats, but not the managing of the flats.
Now let's go back to Mefika age 15.
Yes, so now come from 15, move to between 15 and 21. That age, guys are in school. Again, issues are on parents. What they do with money at that point is very important, especially if they can start in the late 21, 20 to strictly manage a budget well. They get better with money later because they are now making strong choices. Beyond the age of 19, you're no longer a kid. You are now making choices, stronger choices, and living more independently. So if you can expose a kid to managing small money and living on it, they do
Between
better. It
15
sticks.
and 18.
Whatever they sow now sticks. Now, beyond the age of 22, the only thing they have is 3 years to stop adjusting in life. By the time they hit 25, the last stage of brain development has occurred. They are now seeing the world from the point of logic. Fear of risk is real. So if a kid did not learn how to take risk in the earlier ages when they could ask you for $1 billion, even if they have no idea, don't have it. If they could not take risk and lose money at that stage, it will be very difficult for someone above the age of 25 to take risks and lose money. So in the age block number 4, between age 22, you only have 22, 23, and 24 to experiment. 25, experimentation is being blocked. Logically, it's not you who is working his hormones. The moment you cross 25, you're now a full person doing things in the eyes of this is a risk. I don't take risk. You develop a perception of risk. So if you're in your environment, people are not risk takers, you tend to be more like them because that is what they passed to you and you've accepted it to be. But if you are raised in an environment where a risk was being taken, you tend to now still appreciate how to take risk. You will be a lot different from your age mates. Now let's look at it this way. The 3 things or 4 things you must have in the ages 22 to 28. Number 1, you are an adult, so you can have a child. Can be married, can marry, can have a job. You are the age when you can now produce. But you ought to be visionary. I use the word ought because it's not given.
Yeah.
Visionariness is being able to connect today and say the next 25 years. And then you begin to behave today in a manner that the actions of today are producing the results you want to see at 25. That is not the normal thing for a young person. Without prejudice, they are picking from their backyard. The 90% of your brain is carrying what you call the memories of the past, the subconscious. So whatever you have in those memories, the beautiful successes, the lessons learned, you recall them. Every time you want to make a choice, you call from them. Now, if you did not have any experience with investing, if you did not have any good experience with doing or learning anything in the past, you have memories like anybody else. So this is not a very simple lesson. It's a very intricate lesson that one goes through in life. Now, what you don't do in the ages 22, 28, which is the age of laying foundations with your own money, will become an age of regret in the next block. Because now you find yourself having to save more per month to catch up.
You're playing catch up.
Catch up. Now, when you're at my age, like I am now, 53, I'm looking at 67 years ago, you have to now narrow your options to what is possible. Because you cannot still think like this. You have to get this out first, then it allows you to get this.
And you hope that you get it right.
But you have to get it right because now you have experience. It's a different thing. Today, when I have 500,000 bob, I will definitely spend it better than I would spend it 10 years ago. That's for a fact. The only problem is that I will not get 1 million when I want it. I'll get what I can get. And and then I don't have 30 years, I have 7 years. So right now, that then begins to put pressure on you in terms of the kind of risk you take, because you have less money and you have a short time. When you have got all the time, you have less money, but your mind is not open to the actions you need to do. So that experiential learning, if you miss it in the critical age, you don't lay the foundations. In the ages when you've built bad habits in that previous age, they are now catching up with you. You take your kids to expensive schools, then your entire salary will end up paying school fees. If you are a Terrific Tuesday guy, the kids have learned to go for Terrific Tuesday, you are in your 30s into 40s, you are having to spend heavy because the kids have learned to live in a particular manner. And you can't just subject them to sudden change. Even if you are willing to change, unless you are forced to change by retrenchment or an event like that that's dramatic, it is unlikely that a normal thinking person will take a lot of pain on their back from nowhere without any particular instigation. Yes.
Now, talking about value systems, what you talked about earlier.
Yes.
You've been in this industry for so many years, I think more than 20. What are you seeing as the value systems that we're inculcating in our society right now? The good, the bad, the ugly. Where are we at?
All. The ugly are more.
Oh, really?
Yes, because...
What are you seeing?
You judge the sweetness of a fruit by how it tastes. It's not how it looks. What are you seeing around? You are seeing people driving big cars on loan. You are seeing people living in mortgages and parking big cars in front of them, and they have no savings and they have no investments. That is evidence of something that did not work.
Sorry,
right.
top of my mind. If I'm living on mortgage and loan, but I have savings, is that right?
Okay, let me walk you slowly.
I'm just trying to be a devil's
Let me walk you
advocate here.
slowly. And I want to compare a 25-year-old, 35-year-old, and a 45-year-old, so that you can see clearly what I'm talking about.
Yes.
Today, if a 25-year-old has a good job that is paying well, is likely to be driving a 3-liter engine car than it was 10 years ago. True or false?
True.
This is evidence of our spending motive today. And I've used the word more likely because the environment today encourages look big, look good. But a boy who was raised in the Bundus of Kiambu and understands money will still have that big salary and will not buy that big car first because of the differences in value system. So a lot of these people who have been exposed to hot life, let me call it, will tend to continue the hot life in the ages when it matters to make a different set of choices.
But is it necessarily exposure to the hot life, or you lacked, so now unarudishia mwili shukrani?
I don't think it is lacking. It's a question of values not being in place to guide the kind of choices. maybe I should say this. Every choice you make, there's a value system underlying. It's a value behind it. Those people who are in their perhaps older years, 60, going backwards, that came from environments that they actually saw the smaller investments being done, they tend to think through the investment first. So that a 25-year-old today will buy a car first. A 35-year-old today will buy a car first. A 45-year-old will do it differently. It's not very different from these guys in terms of certain exposures, but he has a bit about the old and a bit about the present. So depending on where he was raised, he will most likely be doing things slightly different. So today, it is very right to borrow loan, have a good car, borrow loan, have a good house, and you have absolutely no investment. You've got 10 million in a house, you've got 7 million in a car, but you've got no 1 million in savings and no 1 million in investment. That kind of choice has got to do with the value you have for accumulation. And the choices we make now are informed by the past, not by the future. So planning is not something that changes you. Planning only brings order into your life. But if you can't respect your own plans, it's because there's no motivator. And that motivation comes from being able to connect with the future. Yes.
Now, if at 25 you have not grasped the essence of money, the value system really did not work for you.
Yes.
How are you redeeming yourself at 25? What should you do?
You see, being aware that you are having a problem is the first solution. Because when I met you at 25, you are not aware of it, you lacking up, you are having a problem. Things were running normal.
Yeah.
So you see, not being aware that my choices are informed by something that sits in me, that itself is a problem. Until you are aware and you accept that awareness, because being aware is one thing. Acceptance means I am going to do things differently now that I know. So that one day you don't say, now that I am old. Because you will say, you will definitely say that, now that I am old. If I knew at 29, for example, what I know today, at 29 I was earning a lot of money in this economy. Just in the year 2000, I was earning a whole cool 450K, around that amount of money. And that kind of money, even today, is a lot. But did I know? I didn't. So I had to go through life, and luckily I went through the process of being taught psychology in real life, and I got to go through an experience with a coach that walked me around those angles. That your eyes are like, By the time you are saying, the money is gone.
But
so
the
that
time
at 25-year-old, whose choices today are showing you signs of poverty, need to underscore what makes them make those choices. And I say their values. So do a values test. Find out which of your values are prominent. Just go back to your family and check, and you'll find that these are the values that they practice most. Then make a choice to uplift a value that is resting in number 10 at the bottom. For example, savings and accumulation of money. And then you put in practice small steps which you do daily. For you to suppress a value and uplift another one, you must consistently do things that raise this one and consistently avoid things that would make this one be alive. So that, for example, you ask yourself, what am I doing with money? I'm spending in line 1, line 2, line 3, line 4. Then you say, okay, transport, I'm traveling this expensively. I'm getting this comfort of using an Uber to go to work. What if I woke up earlier and perhaps on a few days of the week, I use public means? That is acceptance. To move back from a 25-year-old in high heels in Uber to one on low heels in a matatu is acceptance. It can't happen unless you accept. And you won't accept it unless you have a very big motivation. I'm sure you never saw me when I was 29.
No.
Yeah.
When, just thinking out, knowing what you know now, having been in the industry for more than 20 years, what would you advise the 25-year-old right now to do, given the economic situation right now? Because there are people who are saying, anyway, there is no money. There is no money to save. There is no money for investment. I mean, looking at the current situation.
The fact is they'll have no money all the time because in their value system, the things that they value more are the things that take that money away. So see, as long as an investment is not one of the tributaries that receive, you see, these are tributaries as you arrive at the lake. When a river is landing in the flat place, arriving at the lake, it splits. So the water that is coming from the mountain, when they arrive here, they split into these tributaries. If one of them was not savings, an increase in salary will not make a savings pop up from nowhere. Because it requires a change in approach, which requires a change in behavior, which requires a change in what underlies the thought process, which is the value. So you have to really find it important to save that money because something is now pressing. When you have got 10 years to retirement like I do, retirement is pressing. You're seeing it like an animal. I really don't need to be told to behave in some direction. I don't need any instigation. But a young person, young lady, young man, same behaviors. 25 years is too far. Perhaps one day, as they like saying, Nita Bomoka or whatever, something like that. Nita Omoka one day. So from where? I'll press 2424 and maybe win $1 billion. That is a nice thought. I wish the probability of math was that good. I teach mathematics, by the way, at Chiromo. So when I tell you it can't happen, I mean it.
Knowing what you know now,
yes.
What would the changes? What are the changes you would make in your life?
The 29-year-old me was very energetic, very sharp, financially up there. I was earning very good money. I didn't know how to invest. Today, if I was in the same age, I would turn 50, seriously invested in very small things that would give me plenty of value at 50, 60 years old. Today, what I know today, I don't need a lot of money. The same money I had, I would produce a lot better results today in terms of the investment I would be carrying. I would enjoy life at 65. I can certainly confirm to you that I will not enjoy life at 65 at what I would call what I would have wished to live. I will not be anywhere near that gate. So the Askaris won't need to stop me from entering that gate because I will not be near it. Yeah. So that is key, that you come to realization earlier in life. By the way, I began teaching financial literacy inside the bank at 29. But I got born again outside the bank at 41.
So what was happening between 29 and 41? I
was basically plastic. Doing it, you need to have the information, that's it. But at 40, just when I was turning 40, I went through a process with Robert Kiyosaki, one-on-one coaching, that opened up my eyes to the things that I'm telling you here. And I have spent a lot of my time deepening those facts.
How have you played catch up?
It is tough. You do small things, you make 3 steps back, front, you make 1 step back, you make 3 back kind of environment. Because some of the things we have to go through are, already we've gotten children used to a certain lifestyle. You can't just change it at once. You change it gradually. Especially in the earlier ages, it becomes difficult even for you to accept to expose them to pain. The catch-up is a lot harder than if you just had to invest a little money and give it 30 years to work. If you put in 1,000 bob every month and it works for 30 years without being touched, it will give you a lot of money.
At what age did you start doing catch-up?
39 and a half. When I was turning 40, luckily for me, and I say luckily, it's bad news, but luckily for me, I worked for an employer who had a policy of your boss teaching you a few things in life, discussing things like when will you marry. Our bosses will discuss that very easily. discussing things like a plan in life. They would discuss, but we treated it with the respite it deserved because of the age I call is Ujinga age. 22 to 35 is truly Ujinga age. And if you don't get anything right there, you can only blame the value system you're carrying. You just need to change that value system and you'll start to see a difference. So that by the time I was turning at 40, it took me 5 years to correct the loans mistakes I'd borrowed.
So is it, sorry to ask, is it you're paying for your quote unquote mistakes of the past by?
I would not call it paying for mistakes, but relieving some of the mistakes in a version that is not exactly where they were. Because, like I say, today you have a kid. That kid is going through a school system. A kid that is not used to government school, say McKinney School. There's a way they are raised in that school. It's a way they do things. You can't move that kid straight from McKinney to government school. They will crash. Even if you're moving them from Form 1 to high school, government school, it has to be a school that can let them adjust slowly. They will crash. I saw people crash in the university where I attended. I saw sons of prominent people who moved from this kind of life and were introduced to a life that as we could survive in. They crashed. So I'm not just being told, I have seen it. So you've got to play your game in a manner that you are not losing everything. You are catching up with investment, but at a pace that is much slower than you would have done it. That's a fact. That one is a reality. If you're going to have to change, first of all, accept that there will be a transition period. The length and depth will depend on the depth of the mistakes you had made. Directly proportionate.
Are you where you wanted to be at this point? How deep were you in it, and are you out of it, or almost
I'm
out of
very
it?
far away from where I wanted to be. The only consolation I have is that now I know how to do things with less money. So today with 100,000 bob, I will do more than I would have done with 1 million in my Ujinga years. Fact. That gives me peace that even if I have 10 years, 10 short years, or 5 short years, the results of these 5 short years cannot be compared with 15 long years that I would have done when I was in my quote-unquote stupid years. Yeah.
I think the discussion really has narrowed down to the value system, what we are teaching our kids from a very early age.
Yes, and the awareness that they are learning. Because a lot of parents don't understand that these kids are picking values that will underlie all their choices.
So if you're to advise parents right now, where do they start? What should they be very intentional about?
It is a hypothetical advice. It is not practical. Because I'm going to ask someone to teach a child to do something they are not doing. The ideal thing is to teach a kid how to create money. I need to teach you how to manufacture. Not because you will manufacture, but you learn the concept of manufacturing by doing something that looks like it. But because my life is not manufacturing, it is very unlikely that that kid will copy it. So you find in the Indian system where they are largely business people, they induce their children to go to the businesses they do very early. Those kids don't have to be taught those businesses. They pick it up. So now I'm talking about a larger community in the bigger Kenya today who are 8 to 5 employees, and is going to be teaching his child that if you learn to create money. But the kid does not see you create money. So it's a hypothetical advice. The ideal thing is to expose a kid to things that you want them to do. Exposure, meaning they do them. They participate in them. Now, it's not about taking a kid to a school where he's taught money. It's about exposing a kid to children games that teach them what savings is. A game that teach them the concept of profit. Then when they have learned the concept of profit, give them an opportunity to begin practicing it in a real sense. Now, those are things that are difficult to program someone whose parents' life is an 8 to 5 job. Very difficult, because they won't get an exposure directly. So unless they get an uncle who has business and they tag along with that uncle and they have an opportunity to learn it, then they will. But it's not something I'm going to tell you, expose children to practical things and your life is not practical, because children observe you. Now you'll have to wait for this kid to be about 15, 16, 17, 18-year-old. And that time they're a bit more resistant than they would be when things are natural. So if they began tagging along with their uncle earlier, it would be easier for them to tag along in the later ages. That is the advice. The advice is do. Doing translates into sustaining that value system and a skill. These other ones is just a story. Yeah. If I were to have a chance with my children today, the first thing I would do in my life is to do the things I want them to do, and then tag them along. But I didn't have that at 40. I didn't have that at 30. I didn't have that at 35. I've had that for more with my eldest son in my consulting life. My other son, school going, was very, very young, would not fit into, for example, a consulting environment. He would not understand what you're doing. Because now that's the trickeriness of the things we do. Yes.
But practical things to observe for a child in the home from the parent, what would they be?
One, you need to demonstrate that you plan by what you do, not by saying it. Yes. There's a planning aspect of life. They need to see it from you. Of course, you tell them, but they need to see it. If your kid sees you doing something, it is easier for them to repeat it. Don't tell a kid, study hard. When you have your homework, do it. And you don't spend a minute doing your work when they are seeing you working late. So you keep telling them to work late is like a punishment. But when you come with your deadlines and you make sure that a deadline is done before you go back to work tomorrow,
We are seeing you doing
you
it.
occasionally stay late and work. You don't have to remind your kid that this thing can be done. They already see it. But now when it becomes you telling them and you don't do it, it becomes like punishment. And especially people, boys and girls, at the age where they are now in their second stage of brain development, age 16, age 17, age 18, where they are questioning everything. Telling is the worst method of training at that point. Because they are questioning, why are you asking me to do that and you don't do anything? If kids are aware that we are having problems in the office, because we talk aloud about our office problems. And they are here, so even mom can be reprimanded in office. Dad can, and then you're very busy here discharging advice. It doesn't make sense.
Interesting. Thank you so much, Wameyo, for the tips on finances and what we need to do to change our value system and be better at our finances. And clearly it starts at in our homes. Our children copy and see what we're doing. So if you're not teaching them by us doing clearly, we may be doing them a disservice in the long run. So thank you so much for coming to the show and for giving us your insights on finances, and I appreciate that. So today's conversation has really been about the values that we're instilling in our children. What are they picking by observing us in our homes? Is it good? Is it bad? Because that really would dictate how they turn up in their adulthood. Please let me know what you've learned from this episode. Until next time, have a good one.